All right. Welcome to the Scrubs to Riches podcast. I'm your host, Shelby, ER nurse, investor, and lifelong learner. I am here to show you what I wish I would have learned outside of nursing school. This is my series, episode 2 of things they don't teach you in nursing school. And I'm here to share my experiences with you about what I learned, what I went through, and what I wish I would have learned before I jumped out on the floor and began my nursing career. So on this show, I'm going to talk about burnout and balance. I'm going to talk about how to invest, what I did to invest my money, and I'm going to talk about some of the things that I have found on my journey that has enabled me to strive and not only be a better nurse, a better investor, but a better all-around human being. So stick with it and let me know what you guys think. I think it's important to talk about my story getting up to where before I started on the floor. It was my first year as a nurse. I wanted to prove to myself that I had what it takes. I had invested all of this time and energy working in the medical field previously as an ER tech and a phlebotomist and getting all of these certifications, and I finally graduated. I finally passed that NCLEX. I finally thought that I knew what I needed to do, finally felt like it was my purpose. So my first year as a nurse, I wanted to prove to myself. It was May 2020 at the height of the pandemic, and I was a brand new nurse in a high census, high acuity hospital. I was in a southern state, and needless to say, it was a war zone. People were dying, families were scared, nurses were scared, I was scared. I didn't know it though. I knew that for the past 5 years before that, I was a student. I was a broke student. I had no money, and I had finally accomplished what I wanted to get and where I wanted to be. And so I hit the ground running. There was a lot of incentives that were propositioned by the hospital to get us to work. There were a lot of differentials that I could take advantage of. There was a lot of money on the table, and I decided to take advantage of this opportunity. So what I ended up doing is I worked as much as I can. And I picked up 16-hour shifts. I would stay over for people. I would work the night shifts in order to get differential. And 3 months in, I noticed that it wasn't fun for me anymore. The paycheck celebrations became longer and harder and just not as enjoyable. And I really felt myself slipping away from happiness and into depression, and I just didn't really like the situation that I was in. So I would notice that on my days off, if I ever had a couple consecutive days off, it would take me about a day and a half just to get out of that funk, just to get back to kind of some sense of normalcy in my life. I would sleep in, I wouldn't leave the apartment, and I would just kind of do some self-destructive behaviors like scrolling on social media for countless hours. I would do a lot of online shopping. I would go to the local bar and buy everybody drinks and really do anything just to pacify my depression, really. And it really got the hold of me. And after a year, I realized that I needed to change something. And I did. That was the start of my journey. It was the start of my exercising, me looking for a brighter light somewhere in the future. I just knew that I had to do something. So what I'm describing is the beginning of burnout for me and how burnout affected me. And we are all, we are all susceptible to burnout. And the reason being is because burnout is sneaky, right? Burnout doesn't just happen all at once. It happens slowly and slowly, and it just chips away at your morals and your happiness and especially your physical and mental health. So some of the early warning signs that I didn't pay attention to was, first of all, I chased money over my health. I knew better. I knew that I didn't want to be the same person that I was treating in that room, right? Somebody overworked, somebody that was scared of where they were at, let their physical and emotional things take a hold of them. I just wasn't ready to face that, and I just chased the money. And a lot of people do that. I've talked to a ton of nurses, and it seems like we all kind of do the same thing. Another thing that I didn't do is I didn't set any boundaries. If there was open shifts, I would take it. If I had something planned and somebody needed coverage, I would say, you know what, I will change those plans. I will cover for you, because I wanted to be the guy that people could depend on, because I knew that if there was an extra shift, I wanted to be the first guy to be given that shift. So I had to become dependable, and I just didn't set a whole lot of boundaries. I also didn't identify myself of anything except for being a nurse. I thought that this was all I had worked up to be. This is all I wanted to do. And now that I'm here, I better go with it. I better just suck it up and just do that. It took me a long time to realize that there are other interests that I really wanted to do, and that I really needed to express myself creatively and put my energy towards something else and not just a paycheck. And these are some of the early signs that I really wish I would have paid attention to. So burnout is essentially chronic stress, right? It's not acute stress. Acute stress is when, somebody comes in and they're not breathing very good, and us as a nurse, as an ER nurse, we understand, okay, we need to do this, we need to do that, get their breathing going on, right? So chronic stress is the exact opposite. It's slow. It happens over time. And the thing is that you do this to yourself. I know I did it to myself. I ignored the warning signs, and I just kept perpetuating it because I was just chasing that check. And so the small stressors start to pile up is what we're really talking about. For instance, I didn't feel like I had a whole lot of time to go grocery shopping or to cook something like a nutritious meal. And for me, I love to cook. I love to eat, and I wasn't filling my refrigerator with good groceries. I wasn't cooking for myself. I was ordering out, which became expensive, and then it was most likely fast food. It was something that I could crave, something that my body was craving, that energy, that quick insulin spike. And it really started to take a toll on me, just that alone. Stressors became my new norm, right? I didn't understand that every day it became harder and harder to wake up. It became harder and harder to go to sleep right after work. I just regretted living the life that I was living. And it wasn't until that all compounded into about 3 months after I started that I started to realize some of these stressors have really built up to contributing to a life that I wasn't really happy about living. And I would downplay it. I would say to myself, you used to work on hot roofs in Southern California over the summer, or you used to crawl under houses with hundreds of feet of wire through cobwebs and mud and all these things. This is obviously when I worked construction. And I was like, you know what, I could do this. I did that. I should be able to do this no problem. And I just downplayed it. And that was such a huge mistake for me. And I'm willing to admit that now. And so what did I do with some of these behaviors is I would just numb myself. I would pacify myself with scrolling through Instagram or YouTube, or, doing online shopping, or just things that really didn't help for self-improvement or anything like that. It seemed like the more money I made, the more money I spent. And it was just a perpetual roller coaster over and over and over. Another thing I did is I neglected self-care. I didn't work out. I didn't read. I didn't look for ways to self-improve my life. I just sat there and sulked and waited for that next shift to come around. And all of these things were just terrible for my psychological and physical health. So if you're feeling the weight of burnout, here are some practical things that you can start today to help mitigate that. One is to set boundaries. Protect your time, protect yourself, and leave some time for activities, for hobbies, for friendships, relationships that you have outside of work. Those are all really important, and they're going to be really the biggest contributing factor to your longevity as a floor nurse. Exercise. Start small. The first thing to do if you want to start including exercise in your life is to make a window of about 30 minutes a day, and then fill that time in with something. Start by walking, start by doing push-ups, start by hiking with a friend, whatever it is. But the most important thing is to set that 30-minute boundary and to really stick with it. Be consistent in that. Start journaling. Write down, even if it's just a few words at the end of the day. This gives you some time and some material to reflect on, to be able to look back and say, hey, this is how much I've grown, or this didn't work this week. How do I fix this? And if at the very end of it, one of the most important things that I did is I seeked help. I seeked the therapist. I seeked out a mentor. I seeked out other people and peers that were going through the same thing and talk about them. Talk about the things that didn't go right. Talk about the things that did go right. Talk about dreams, aspirations, whatever it is. But it does help to create a community where you can talk to other like-minded people that are interested in the same things outside of work, or maybe they're going through the same things at work. So all in all, burnout is not a weakness. It's a signal that you are imbalanced in your life and in your work atmosphere. So if you know that something needs to change, you have to be proactive in it, and you have to establish some kind of habits, or maybe break some of those bad habits, so that you can be a better person. You can be a better nurse, and you can be a better person outside of work. Because at the end of it, if something happens to you at work, they are just going to find somebody else to replace you. So although it is important, it is nice to pay bills, it is nice to have nice things, but realize that it is just a job, and no amount of job, stress, money is worth your overall happiness. So I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear what your experience is. What are some of the warning signs that you have noticed? What are some of the things that you've done? And message me about them. You can DM me on my Instagram at nurse_Shelbo. I'd love to hear from you guys, and watch out for the next episode of Scrubs to Riches. All right, take care.